Yeah, Happy New Year. Let me start from there because I know in the new year, many aims come to the mind of Nigerians, and individually we are bound to find progress, will I say, self-development, growth, and of course, even prosperity is one thing that we all agree on every year. And it is great to have a personal aims and of course objective, but it is also more rewarding if we have unity and progress in our country collectively. Again, I say welcome to another interesting year, another excellent afternoon to all those who are watching me right now. This is the first edition of Real Talk with Kike in 2023, and of course it promises to be more interesting, more engaging, every editions of Real Talk with Kike. And of course I remain your host and the convener of this platform, Kike Atanda-Owo. And I think it's important for me to quickly usher into the On This Day segment because on this day's segment, you know, I dislike to start on this note, but it is sad that one of the notable events we had exactly 11 years ago was militants, you know, armed with automatic weapons storming a town hall in the city of Mumbai in Adamawa State, to be precise, where people had gathered to mourn about 3 Christians, and they were shot on this previous evening 11 years ago. I think it's important for us to get more on this video. Stay with us, we'll be right back.
On this day in 2012, exactly 11 years ago, militants armed with automatic weapons stormed a town hall in the city of Mubi in Adamawa State, where people had gathered to mourn 3 Christians shot on the previous evening. According to a Nigerian Red Cross official, at least 18 people were confirmed killed, and a separate ambush of Christians leaving a church service in the state capital of Yola left at least 8 people dead. Most of the victims were said to be Igbo. Later that day, a spokesman for Boko Haram calling himself Abu Kuka claimed responsibility for these 2 incidents.
All right, many thanks for staying with us. You know, it's just unfortunate that I'm opening the year with this kind of history reminding us. And I think that I hope that we will write good history going forward for this nation, because with what is happening right now, I keep using the word culture on this platform, all this is still happening in our states, in different states today. A few days ago, we still heard something similar, even though it's not practically about religion, about a family that was actually wiped out in Ogun State. You know, it's just unfortunate. I pray that we all turn a new leaf and remember that we should write a good history going forward for this nation, because there's enough challenges already in our hands. I think it's time for a quick message from our sponsors. Please stay with us. We'll be right back. Let's take a quick profile of our guests. Please stay with us. We'll be right back. All right, this year 2023 have been waiting for us here, and Nigerians anticipated this year because it is the year in which Nigerians will vote and subsequently have the power changed to the hands of the next administration. And before that occurs, without bias, it will be of necessary importance to have a review on the achievement of this administration since 2015, with the pointers left untouched, if you ask me, and before he closes office in the month of May. And on the live show today, guys, the representative of the president, who by his office is the senior special assistant to the president on media and publicity, by name he is Malam Garba Shehu, and I've just shared this clip, his video clip of his profile earlier. Again, let me use this opportunity to quickly usher him in. Welcome again to the show, Malam Garba Shehu. It's a pleasure to have you on the live show today. I must say many thanks for creating time to be here. And let me start by saying, I know our New Year edition last year that we had one of your colleagues, Mr. Femi Adesina, speak with us from the presidency as well. And I'm happy that you also created time now to also, you know, keep us up to date regarding all the achievements and some of the challenges of your administration. But how are you doing today, sir? How is your day going? Let's start from there.
I think I'm fine. It's a good day, bright one.
Fantastic.
It's not as cold as you have in the other parts of the north, so it's okay, Abuja.
Last 8 years since 2015, despite we Nigerians, you know, having general challenges, I want to believe that some commendation on the scorecard that this administration can be praised for. What are those achievements, if you might want to remind us or remind Nigerians?
Well, they're in so many areas. And when President campaigned in 2015, majorly he dwelled on three key promises: security, anti-corruption, and restructuring of the economy, particularly with regards to job creation and all of that. I would quickly say that the president has done exceedingly well dealing with the issues of security. When he came in, we had an independent state created out of the Nigerian state by the Boko Haram terrorists with their flag and system of administration, system of taxation, and all of that. That caliphate created out of about 14 local councils in the north has been abolished. And normalcy is the challenge now is rebuilding the Northeast. Anti-corruption, we have done so much. Only yesterday, the chairman of the EFCC was saying he had achieved 3,786 prosecutions in convictions in just 1 year. I want to say that the success of the anti-corruption war is in the sanitization of the moral environment in the country. Before President Buhari, corruption had been assumed to be normative, as being part of our own life. I think that the major achievement today is that Nigerians have come to accept the fact that corruption is wrong and it shouldn't be encouraged. So we're doing a lot, changing attitudes, and recoveries are enormous. They have been done in so many ways. And in terms of the economy, the restructuring of the economy has led to look at what we have done with massive production of food. This country used to spend $5 million importing rice every day. They were self-sufficient in rice. And this has created 30 million new jobs, as President Buhari said. I'm sure that we'll have time to go into details as we proceed on the program.
I agree with you, sir, that we'll have enough information, or you will be providing us with a lot of insights, especially regarding security, corruption, and of course, massive production, like you mentioned. But quickly, with some incidents or activities that took place in the last few, will I say 24 hours, so to speak, when it comes to the new budget of over 21 trillion for 2023, which was signed on Tuesday. You know, some experts have described it as, you know, will I say timely in effort to breathe fresh air into the economy. However, other finance experts, you know, including the ex-minister Obi Ezekwesili, you know, says that it can't be conclusive, you know, so to speak, in terms of our debt profile while having almost 12 trillion in deficits. Sir, I must ask you, how do we reconcile with this? You know, what funds does a debt-striking country like ours have before a budget of over 12 trillion naira can be implemented? I'm asking in pain, sir.
Well, you know that it's a reflection of the times we are in. Let me warn that I'm not an expert in economics, but a journalist, being a generalist, having a sense of what is going on, I'm not sure there is one country that hadn't borrowed to stem recession and to keep economy is going, especially in view of the coronavirus pandemic, which closed down the entire world for nearly 2 years. So countries, US, UK, everyone had dipped into their hands into central banks. They had borrowed massively in order that they keep their economies going. Otherwise, the consequences would have been such that they would have sunk deeper and deeper into recession. We must congratulate our own country. Nigeria was number 2 country to come out of the COVID-induced recession in the whole world. And it's a major commendation that has been earned. So all of the things that are going on, this country is in a war as we speak today against terrorism, against all of these things that are going on, and we're winning. So in effect, Nigeria needs to borrow. Nigeria had borrowed in order that we keep our heads, economically speaking, above the waters. If we hadn't done that, we probably had been swimming in a bigger problem of the type that some of our neighbors have found themselves in.
Up with one of the state governors, Governor Opuzoduma, who praised Mr. President for approving the surveillance equipment and other technical gadgets that will help to control crime and insecurity in the country with minimal, will I say, collateral damage. The area of security that you mentioned earlier in terms of this administration trying to curb when it comes to corruption and insecurity, I feel insecurity is one that I want to say that, this administration, for some reason, far back from when they've been discredited from this tenure, despite a series of challenges with military aids by the president. So my question to you right now, Sizer, couldn't we look into, or couldn't we have looked inward for a technological solution like this earlier than now, knowing that your administration, your tenure is ending in some few weeks, or in May to be precise?
Well, let me say that one, with security, it's clear by now that the challenges are mutating. They keep changing, because when President Buhari came newly in 2015, he didn't face the challenges that we now face today. It was essentially a Boko Haram thing. Then it was much later that even the ISWAP, Islamic State in West Africa, came knocking on our doors. And in addition to that, also we have been challenged by the farmer herders clashes. This had been there from pre-colonial times, but they escalated at some point, and the government had to now face all of that. And then came banditry and kidnapping, and now, as you just said, this problem in the southeast. It's worrisome. It's very disturbing that law enforcement agents are under attack. Public facilities, the courtrooms, INEC facilities and police stations, public infrastructure are coming under attack. So the president's consideration is that we are not using conventional means to attack this unconventional crime situation that has emerged. So this is why they resort to new technologies, which I'm happy that the governor himself did not disclose what it is, because the thing is that there are some things that you don't just have to say everything. Otherwise, the criminals will go ahead of us. They are well funded domestically and possibly even from abroad. So this has to be kept under wraps. The thing is, let us hope we begin to see the results. You said the thing about whether we cannot try sociological and other. I think that all of these things are going hand in hand. There's a military exercise going on in many of the states. In virtually more than 30 states of the country, military is engaged. There are also non-kinetic measures that are being pursued. And I'm aware that there's a lot of engagement going on with the community leaders, with the religious leaders, political leaders in the Southeast. A few months ago, the Inspector General of Police took a whole week, and he was present from one state and community to another in the Southeast. So the government is also pursuing, dialogue and talking to people to see how the community and law enforcement can work together to bring down this disturbing situation.
For that insights and the great submission right there in terms of, keeping us up to date with what the president is doing at the moment. And I also want to use this opportunity actually to also thank Mr. President, for empowering INEC in many areas to ensure that we have a credible, free and fair elections. On my radio show yesterday, I engaged Mr. Aluko, Victor Aluko, who also kept us up to date regarding what the president is doing in their office. And I say kudos to his office. However, just as the president has vouched his commitment to see to this in terms of world meeting and even the last, leaders summit he attended in New York, I would like to ask you, sir, how do we ensure that security is assured during election, especially in the East and other problematic regions? We, the people, would like to know it because I feel that our safety is paramount and would want to know that our lives will not be at risk because we want to vote.
Yeah, it's a big issue really because people must feel safe in order to exercise their franchise. And the worst thing that can happen to this election, which, as you said, the president wants to make a legacy of his own, supervising an election that is even better than the one that brought him to office. He wants it to be free, fair, credible, and acceptable by both parties, by all of the parties that are involved. The security is being reviewed from time to time. And as you know, we had apprehensions ahead of Anambra State governorship election, for instance. And there it was. It held peacefully. It produced one of the best elections we had seen in the country. And everybody, yes, our party, the APC, lost the election, but the president was the earliest person to say, thank you, INEC, thank you, and congratulated, the ABGA, candidate who emerged as winner. We have had elections in off-season elections in a number of states, Oshun, Ekiti, Edo, and all of these things are coming to show that we're getting better with each day. I want to assure you that these law enforcement agents are not resting on their oars. They have been given assurances upon assurance to Mr. President that they will deliver on the issue of security. And we are optimistic, we are absolutely so, that election will be done in the Southeast and that the threat of security would be eliminated to the degree that it does not threaten the outcome of the election.
That submission against her. But sir, I would like to remind you one of your statements. If I don't ask you this question while you're on air today, I don't think that I've done justice to bringing you on the show. Sir, your very self, described former President Obasanjo as a morally dirty man for supporting and endorsing his candidates. Why have you used such a description for him, despite his right to endorse who he wants to and his right to support the candidate of his choice?
Yeah, well, he didn't do just that. If he had chosen to endorse Governor Obi as his candidate, that's perfectly in order. It is his own choice to do so. Nobody would have quarreled with him. We didn't come into it, but for the fact that he has failed the records of our administration, and unfairly so, and for which reason we thought that he needed a reply. Ordinarily, we had allowed Mr. Obasanjo to just say whatever he wants to say, and it never really, hampered the achievement, success of the Buhari administration in any meaningful way. So the records have to be set, and the facts must be stated as they are. This is why we had to respond to him. Otherwise, we did not have done so.
Follow-up question to your submission right now, but I know that we are running out of time because we have another second segment of the show. And I wanted you to highlight, how it went wrong. But, moving on away from that, one of the main agenda of this administration was fighting corruption, which was one of your submission earlier, and of course security, and will I say financial mismanagement as well. However, despite the empowerment of EFCC by Mr. President, a lot of fraud was still perpetrated in this tenure. I really don't want to start citing example, but maybe I should use one at the moment. You know, the example is that of Mr. Ahmed Idris, the accountant general of the Federation, that the court has, you know, ordered to fortify or for sure over $900,000. I hope I'm quoting it right, and of course about 15 houses as well. So we have many of them roaming the streets of Nigeria after such humongous amounts right now. You know, sometimes I wonder, am I really working hard when I hear some figures, because I apply myself a lot at my place of work. But I must ask you, sir, why shouldn't Nigerians think that this administration is biased with fighting corruption?
No, you see, the thing is that the fact that corruption is being exposed under President Muhammadu Buhari administration is not to say that administration is more corrupt than the ones that had come before it. No, what this says is that the anti-corruption mechanism, the agencies are working. Before this time, it was possible that if somebody had taken all of that money you just mentioned now, the person would simply have disappeared and to go somewhere and enjoy his money. So it is the fact, it is an illustration of the fact that the war against corruption by Mr. Buhari is working. This is why there is exposure, there is no cover up. If the idea was to cover things up, people will not know that these things are going on. Why are they going about freely and not? The constitution of the country is very clear as to who is to do what. The separation of powers is such that President Muhammadu Buhari has absolutely no role beyond investigating cases of corruption and prosecuting. And the moment he tenders before a court of law, it is absolutely not his responsibility to tell the judges what to do about those cases. Sometimes we hear judgments, we applaud them, we are quite happy, we celebrate the judgments. There are times when we feel unhappy with the outcomes, but this is the only thing you can do, because the president cannot meddle now in matters before the parliament, before the judiciary, because the constitution says he's confined to his own space and he cannot cross over.
Fantastic. Okay, I hear you, sir. Many thanks again for your submission. This will definitely be my last question to you on this platform. I know that you might want to be diplomatic in this question or in this interview. I personally would like to know who the president may likely be voting for at the ballots to replace him in May. Do you have an idea? Can you share with us and our viewers who are watching us right now, sir?
I think this question is a very redundant question. President will vote for APC candidate, and that is Ashwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. There is absolutely no doubt about this. President is a party man. He has been brought to where he is as a party man. He must be loyal to the party and stick to the decision of the party members to put forward Ashwaju Bola Tinubu. It's going to be a secret ballot. I hope the president will do one thing he hasn't done before: display, after printing his own displays, ballot paper for Nigerians to see. It's going to be Ashwaju Bola Tinubu, no doubt about it.
Thanks for clarifying that. But the reason why I asked you this question, sir, is the fact that, you know, yes, you've clarified that he's a party man, he's a loyal man, but many people have not seen him, you know, campaign for Tinubu heavily the way Tinubu campaigned for him in 2015. You know, I remember vividly. So we've only seen him in one of the campaign location, and of course his wife as well. You know, I've campaigned I think twice or so. So hence the reason why I'm asking this question. And I know that he's a man who is fair when it comes to people exhibiting their fundamental human rights, so to speak. That's why I'm asking this question. Why is it that we are not seeing the sitting president right now, you know, go from state to state to go and to campaign for his party man?
Well, Ashwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu is the candidate. The party will not have two candidates in this election. The president has state duties in addition to all other things that the party itself must help him to do. That the president must not fail in the balance of this to deliver on things that he ought to deliver. And three, I want to say that I think from the beginning, we had lost a little of time. But now I'm sure that this campaign DG, the candidate Ashwaji Bola Tinubu and the party chairman have briefed the president about the campaign program, and this will from time to time be considered alongside state duties that the president must carry out. He alone must carry out. The president will be on Monday, watch out, is going to be
All right, I apologize.
There is.
Are you there, sir? All right, I think we lost him. Unfortunately, I couldn't hear the last words. Again, I want to thank you for coming on the live show, Malam Garba Shehu. It's been an interesting time with you. I must emphasize on the launch show, Real Talk with Kike today. I think it's time for us to go on a quick break and get a word from our sponsors. Afterwards, we'll actually also play the next guest profile video. Stay with us. We'll be right back. All right, glad to know you're still with us. Again, I'm saying Happy New Year once again. If you're just tuning in, yes, and I say a beautiful afternoon to my sighting co-host and Real Talk. We're in the same color where both in mind this morning.
There's something that
How you doing, Damlola Banire? It's nice to be here with you again in 2023, and I just hope that this year is going to be full of blessings for every one of us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing beautifully well. I mean, when I saw you, you stepped in before me, and I said, Sister Mi is always in my mind. Is she living inside my mind? Now we're wearing brown together. And of course, it's graceful and it's gracious that we're here again alive, hale and hearty. A lot of storms happened in 2022, and you're still there. I'm grateful for you and I know that 2023 will give us a beautiful ride and a beautiful nation. So far, we do well.
All right, in case you just joined the show, the New Year's special edition was divided into 2 segments. And of course, we just concluded with the 4th segment with the SSA to the president, Mr. Malam Garba Shehu, where shared a lot of insights with us regarding corruption, regarding the financial management of his tenure, and of course, when it comes to food misplacement, and shall I say, of course, security, which is part of the challenges we're facing today. But moving away from that, on the 2nd segment of the show, we have another guest who will be discussing the 2023 fiscal budget released by the president that has been sent for approval at the Senate. In the last 48 hours, or will I say 24 hours, there have been different reactions to this, and of course, this has released series of backlash. Some people are questioning the budget. Some people have questions on the financial of this budget, as well as, will I say, the debt volume that's attached to it. I'm asking myself, for all those who are actually running or who are actually desperate, for lack of a better word right now, who just wants to become president of this country, I hope that they know the shoes that they are going to be wearing, knowing that many, one of them is going to actually, you know, take on the depth of this country. And I don't want any of them to start pointing fingers at the previous administration, because we all have seen it. So to discuss with us is our learned financial analyst and of course the founder of Carry Assets. You know, we've played this profile earlier. I think that let me quickly use this opportunity to open our phone lines for those who might want to be connecting to us as we proceed. Remember that you can be part of this conversation by calling the studio number 08098877400. Is showing on your screen right now. And of course, we're streaming live on Facebook and YouTube page, both on Silverbird platform and on Real Talk with Kike. Sir, are you there, sir?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, many thanks for doing this with me, and I must say thank you so much. Thank you so much for honoring the invite. You know, but let's just go straight to the topic at hand. I'm not sure if you watched the first segment of the show where Mr. Shehu, you know, Garba, you know, shared a lot of insights. You know, and I know that this next administration is inheriting a debt volume of 77 trillion, which puts you and I, so to speak, in debt with our loan financials. So, to, you know, for those people who are entrepreneurs, even as a citizen, let me put it like that. This legacy, Mr. President, you know, is leaving for the next president. Can the next administration actually survive it? Is a question I'm asking in pain. Or is it that, you know, we are just going to continue to, you know, render the next government incapacitated, if that's the word to use right now? What's your take or advice on this?
What I would say is that how the next government will navigate it depends on who we elect as the next government. The government is there to solve problems. When the government comes into place, the government will look at, I mean, those who are asking us to employ them for that job should be aware of the issues that are going to confront them. And they should have mapped out their strategies on how to deal with those issues. But if we elect somebody who does not have a grasp of the issues, doesn't understand the economy, how the economy works, doesn't understand how to deal with debt burden, or is thinking that there's still a lot of freebies to be taken from the National Treasury, then we're in for a difficult period. But if we elect a person who is prudent, who is not frivolous with expenses, who will ensure you keep a tap on the expenditure profile of the government.
Damilola, quickly, with the fourth segment and of course with all the submission that Mr. Garba Shehu has actually put out there, you know, what's your take, especially with the fact that I feel that the sitting president haven't done enough in terms of campaigning for the current candidate in his party, you know, and there are quite a number of reactions regarding that, in as much as I felt that he gave his own submission about loyalty to the sitting president and he has supported the best way he can. What's your take thus far?
Well, I think on that, for me personally, I've seen it too, like you have also raised an eyebrow on this particular subject. I'm looking in two ways. Is it that our president is not really healthy to go on different campaigns with the current APC flag bearer? Now, if we look at him, Buhari is about 89. He's frail.
Apologies, I have to interrupt your line of thought. I understand that our guest is back. So are you there?
I can hear the studio very well.
All right.
I don't know if you can hear me.
Then we can hear you now. Please go ahead.
Okay, so I had actually landed on my first thoughts that it all depends on who we elect as the next president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. That if we get right with the right candidates, certainly we are going to see this debt burden the government begin to address it. But if we get it wrong with electing anybody who feels there is a lot still in the treasury for them to share, then we are in for a difficult period. But as it stands today, any government that comes into power should realize that we have a debt burden that has to be dealt with. Any government coming to power should realize that we have a revenue problem that needs to be addressed. Any government coming to power should realize that we have overbloated our expenditure and it needs to be addressed. Once the government comes with those perspectives, then they will get to work and do the right things.
Chuku, I like the fact that you emphasized on who we elect, and I will say categorically who we elect will reflect on Nigerians at large. But now who we elect, looking at the robust resume of our candidates from the APC to ABGA to LP to PDP, who do you think in your own assessment as a financial person or a financial advisor, analyst, who would you think in your assessment would do a better job in managing our debt profile and, of course, bringing us from these incessant problems of security and economic meltdown? Who do you think? Overview.
Well, it's difficult for anybody to say who I think. I have my own preference of the candidate, just like you and another person, and Kike has her own preference on who we think should do the job better. But what I would do is to throw a broad perspective on what should be the qualification of who Nigeria should elect. And I think right now is for us to, as people, to define those parameters that should be the qualifications of our new leader. And one of these is because we're talking of an economy that's in their stretch. One of which should be that the person must have a deep understanding of how the economy works. What happens in other countries, in other jurisdictions, that when they want to elect a president, they elect a leader that is most qualified for the time. And that was why, if you look back to the era of the Second World War, the British people had to bring in Churchill to govern them with Winston Churchill. So for Nigeria today, the most critical challenge we have is economy. A lot of the problems we have that we consider as social problems are fallout of the economic issues we have today. Issue of insecurity is partly a result of the level of poverty we have in the country. Many people are excluded from the economic space. So we should look for somebody who has a good grasp of economic issues. The second issue is that we need to ask, where is the person coming from? What's the person's history or background? What has the person done in the past? In terms of prudent economic management, we must look for somebody who is very prudent, who has a record of prudent economic management, and a person who is disciplined enough, who will consider the national treasury different from his personal treasury, and will be able to focus on using the public resources for public good. If we elect such a person among the 18 presidential candidates, then we would have gotten a right with leadership.
All right, many thanks for that insight right there. And I cannot help but bring you back to the topic at hand regarding the, revenue budget, and security and defense is taking about 2.9 trillion, so to speak, about 13.4% of the critical allocation of the budget, compared to the infrastructure having about 5.7%. What will the investment sector thrive on to generate revenue for the economy is what I'm asking now. That's my first question to you. And my second question to you, sir, is the fact that the interest on this loan to finance the budget, 1.8 trillion. I think if I'm to do the equivalent of it in dollars, about $4 billion extra. The Senate last week delayed a decision on the president's request to convert about 53 billion worth of dollars of central bank overdraft to the government into about 40 years bonds after some lawmakers questioned the plan. Sir, as a business leader and an entrepreneur myself, when I know that when it comes to inflow and outflow and debit and the likes, how so do you think budget will be approved by the Senate now with all that I've shared thus far? And may I also ask, how do we want to hit the ground running with necessary economic actions and interventions with all that is in the air, so to speak?
Okay, let's start from the first part of your question, which is the issue of the amount allocated for security, for defense. What I said earlier is that part of the problem we are dealing with today is the economic problem. Today, the Nigerian army seem not to be effective. The Nigerian police seem to be not to be effective because they are stretched to their limits, principally because you have little wars or minor wars at different regions of the country. So the country is actually in a state of war. The army has been deployed in about 34 of the 36 states of the Federation, if not the entire 36 states of the Federation today. So the army is stretched. Why is this so? Because at every nook and cranny of the country, you have a person who has been excluded economically, who is dissatisfied, who does not see a future, and who does not consider tomorrow that tomorrow is better than today. And the person, some of them are at the point where they have no value for life. because they have been so badly treated by the society due to economic pressures that they lost faith in the country. And that was reflected in the unemployment report that was last published in 2000, where the number of people, labor force increased, but the number of people looking for jobs declined, because a lot of people have lost faith in the economy. So that's what is creating this pressure on security, defense. So in effect, what I'm saying is that we cannot fight security challenges we have today with kinetic forces only. We have to build an economy that will create employment opportunities for anybody who is able and willing to work. That way, we're going to reduce the number of people who are involved in one form of malfeasance or another. So that's the issue. So the no amount of capital allocation will address the issue of insecurity we have in the country. Now, going to the other aspect of your question, which is on the interest payment on the loans and how long, whether the country still have the headroom to invest in other critical sectors of the economy, given the amount we'll be paying as interest. Of course, you did in your opening comments said that the country, the next president will be inheriting about 70 to 77 trillion naira in debt. So if you have built up that level of debt, then you have an interest payment obligation attached to the debt. That's what you call interest payment, which you call is a non-discretionary expense, because when you fail to pay, you are said to have defaulted. What has happened is that the government interest payment obligation is crowding out the resources available for critical sectors of the economy. Ordinarily, defense shouldn't be a priority of a country like ours. Our priority should be education. It should be healthcare. Those are two critical sectors. Defense issue can happen not because of deterioration in economic activity and deterioration in insecurity around the country. So we don't have enough money to invest in these critical sectors. You talked about fiscal infrastructure. If you look at last year's budget, that is 2022 budget, the budget figure for infrastructure was about 6.3 trillion naira, that means adjusted budget. Only about 1.8 trillion naira had been spent because the government did not have the money. Remember that every kobo that the government spends today is borrowed. So unless the government is able to borrow to the limit of what it had projected, this year we're projecting a deficit of 11.34 trillion naira, and the government wants to borrow about 11 trillion naira. So if the government is unable to borrow that, they will not be able to do infrastructure. And some of us have advocated that we need to review our approach to infrastructural build and recognize that we can no longer fund infrastructure from budget allocation because we don't even have the resources. We need to bring in private capital to build infrastructure. We need to completely overhaul the approach of our fiscal framework such that to make it more functional than what we have today.
All right. Okay, sir. I think another concern for me on the federal government borrowing another 11.8 trillion naira, if I'm being correct here. Another part of it for me is on subsidy. I know that I was seeing it this morning on one of our top news channels, and we kept, I saw Showore, the ACA candidate, something, if I'm being correct now. Showore was talking about removal of subsidy, that when he becomes president, he's going to continue paying subsidy, and this has been going back and forth for a long time. Now, I remember during President Jonathan's era, it was we went to Ojota, we went to march against subsidy, and currently some fuel stations are selling fuel for 170, some are even still selling at 230, 240. Do you think that there can be a synchronization coming from the next administration, looking at the fact that this 3.3 trillion naira for subsidy is marked till June, and after June, after the new administration takes over, there might be or there might not be subsidy? What do you think as a business analyst, which will be fruitful for Nigerians?
Okay, let me start it from this perspective. I think it's actually very unfortunate that the current government decided to kick the can forward and leave it for the next government that will come into place. The Minister of Finance said that we are borrowing to pay subsidy. And when you borrow to pay subsidy, you are borrowing to spend on an expenditure head that you can't point to. It flows down the drain. And therefore, you are building so in the first 6 months of this year, the government will borrow 3.36 trillion naira to pay subsidy. That adds to our budget deficit, that adds to our national debt, which is absolutely not necessary. The question you ask yourself, which I've always asked Nigerians, that are we better off as a people by enjoying fuel subsidy? Are we better than our people in Rwanda? Are we better than those who live in Kenya? Are we better than those who live in most countries of the world who don't even have never heard anything called fuel subsidy? The truth is that our conditions have continued to deteriorate. We are now the poverty capital of the world. We have 1.3 million people living in what they call multi-dimensional poverty. So subsidy has not helped us. If any presidential candidate thinks that's the way to go, well, just like the current government has sustained it despite their position that it was a fraud before they were elected in 2015, we will sit down and watch the person. But I know that what happens in reality is that in the short term, politics will triumph over economy. But in the medium to long term, economy will triumph over politics. The economic reality will dawn on whoever is elected a president, and they will realize that subsidy is not sustainable. You can't borrow for consumption. You can't borrow to incur, subsidize the product you are importing, and therefore incentivizing additional consumption of that product.
For that submission, it's just unfortunate that Nigerians are suffering the brunt of the fuel price hike. And I'm asking in pain, where do we go from here? But moving away from that, this will be the last question on this platform because of time. You know, the ratio of revenue, or will I say gross domestic product, that's the GDP now, you know, to debt, you know, I'm talking about the debt stock, is another argument that this government is using to back their continuous borrowing from all the things that I've read thus far, you know, as an entrepreneur. How valid is this argument from your own perspective, you know, and can our oil revenue of 1.9 trillion match our debt stock of 77 trillion is a question I would like you to throw some light on before we wrap up the show.
Okay, Kike, let me just give you a graphic illustration of the fallacy in when the government says our debt to GDP is not yet optimal. In the first place, if you go and build a 10-story building in Iyanekpaja or in Okokomaiko, and you compare the rent you get from that 10-story building in Okokomaiko or Iyanekpaja to a person who has a 10-story building in Marina or VI, are you comparable? You can actually,
All right. Fortunately, I think we've lost our guest, you know, and I understand that we've run out of time because there are a lot of ads that are going to be played based on what Moses have shared with me. But, you know, let me just use this opportunity to thank both our guests. You know, they've been very, you know, all what they've shared has been very informative.
The situation we find ourselves. Yeah, the problem we have is that our balance sheet is our GDP is not generating the kind of revenue of its size because of the structure of our economy, and because our economy is not highly formalized, and a lot of the income we get are from non-productive sectors of the economy like oil and gas. So, because we don't have that revenue, what we'll be looking at is this: do we have the revenue? What's our revenue to GDP? What are debt service to revenue? Today, we're talking about 80% of the total revenue is spent on paying interest, not principal repayment. And we're approaching a level where it will be more than 100% to be used to pay interest. So it doesn't matter the size of your GDP. As long as you can't pay interest from your revenue, you have defaulted. So we should stop deluding ourselves with the concept that our debt to GDP is still not high. But the issue is that we are not generating enough revenue from that GDP to pay interest. And therefore, you cannot continue to heap borrowing debt on that revenue.
Mr. Johnson, for all that you have shared thus far. It's been an interesting time with you on Real Talk with Kike, and absolutely a pleasure to have the honor of you, Mr. Johnson Chukwuka, you know, despite the, you know, short invitation. Many thanks again, you know, and of course I know that you are the founder of Cowrie Assets. And I wish you the very best as we continue to forge ahead and tackle all the challenges, the financial challenges in this country. Many thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your day. This is where we draw the curtains of the show. Till I come your way next week, remember to be kind to someone and put a smile on somebody's face. My name remains Kike Atanda-Owo. Bye now.